Good morning. So, kind of an interesting um, algorithm this morning on YouTube. First one that came up was about toxic families. And they talk about, this psychologist was talking about how families will have a scapegoat. And the scapegoat is the agreed upon victim of the family. The family generally is going to have like a top person who is a narcissist. And this narcissist uh, then has its pecking order. And the person on the bottom is going to be the scapegoat. The one who is going to be blamed for everything. The person who loses all the arguments as to whose fault it is. The one who is abused the most. And then the pecking order goes up from there. And the video was talking about if the scapegoat escapes that family, moves out, leaves, is taken away by CPS, or whatever the reason is, that scapegoat escapes that abusive family. And I think the best scenario is when the scapegoat stands up to the narcissist. When the scapegoat realizes that the narcissist is the head honcho, the mob boss, and everyone between the scapegoat and the narcissist is a flying monkey, or is a part of the team that is always against the scapegoat, and the scapegoat realizes that, hey, this is not working for me, this is abusive. Maybe the scapegoat had a time where they were able to witness a functioning family that was not toxic, and they said, hey, I'd like that. And then maybe that scapegoat realized that it actually isn't the scapegoat's fault, that it's actually just the fact that they're in a toxic family. And when that scapegoat leaves, then the narcissist isn't able to project their own personal flaws and their own personal traumatic injuries onto the scapegoat, so then they need to find a new scapegoat. And basically it runs up the pecking order. Next scapegoat, next scapegoat, next victim, next victim, next victim. And the fact of the matter is, all families are a little bit like this. And society has deemed that only a certain amount of these dysfunctional families are acceptable. So we've made laws against certain kinds of abuse. But we've also discovered that there's abuse that's so hard to see that we don't realize it until we're much older and we've left those abusive environments. And then we realize, oh, I was a scapegoat, or my family member was a narcissist, or I was emotionally abused or psychologically abused. I was brainwashed. I was trained to neglect and reject family members. Maybe you weren't the scapegoat. Maybe you were one of the flying monkeys who was trained and brainwashed to hate the scapegoat. And then you realize, gosh, my default setting as a human being is to blame somebody and to get everybody to blame that person. And that's not right, you realize someday. So, what was said during this video is that a lot of these families that never get out of this cycle of scapegoating and narcissistic abuse is that these families are practicing, or not practicing, but they're caught in a generational loop. So an example of this generational loop would be like, I'm a bricklayer, okay? And I always am going to go back to bricklaying or whatever I've done in my life to kind of make an example. But a lot of times, I end up working with a guy who says, I'm a third generation bricklayer. Okay, so at one time, his ancestor, great-great-grandfather or something, became a bricklayer. They had a child. That child became a bricklayer. Next child became a bricklayer. Next child became a bricklayer. And it stays in that loop. Okay? So that person who's a third, fourth generation bricklayer, I'm working next to him, what they have, apart from not so much myself, but others around them, is they have a conviction. They have in their heart such a great conviction, they are so confident that they're supposed to be doing this because my father's done this, my father's father's done this, my father's father's father has done this, and now I do this. This is who I am. This is what I do. I am a bricklayer. That conviction will create a focus. It will create an unbreakable bond with whatever the subject of we're talking about is. That is an example of a generational cycle, something that you continue to do generation after generation because you, as a boy or a girl, see your father figure, mother figure, family figure, the way your home works. You see that, and then you create that for yourself when the time comes. And that's what a fourth generation bricklayer does. They see what their father did before them, and then they do it, and it becomes a natural way of life for them because that's the way it's always been done. Same way that these toxic families continue to abuse a scapegoat over and over and over and over and over again. Now, that algorithm is talking about the dynamics of all that, okay? Clearly, scapegoat wants to leave, scapegoat leaves, narcissist finds a different scapegoat. That cycle will live on if children are born and they see that dynamic in the family. But the winner, ultimately, is the scapegoat who gets out, who stood up to the narcissist and said, screw this. Next video on the algorithm was about religion. And I didn't think that these were going to be related at all. But then I realized the old religions. I started talking about the old religions. The Greek, the Roman, the Norse, India, the religions of India, where there's many gods. And these religions are family-oriented. Not Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's like a single father home. Like, wouldn't that be nice for the men nowadays? But there was a head father, and then there was like a mother god. It'd be like Zeus and Hera, okay? And then there would be like their kids, and then their kids' kids, and then you'd get down the line, and you have the demigods who are half human, half god, and all this and that. And these stories of the old religion, what a perfect way to spread the message of what a toxic family household looks like and what it's like for the scapegoat to escape. What a perfect setting that would be. You know, it'd be like Zeus and Hera and Hercules and Athena and all the other gods are all picking on this one god, and then that god leaves, and then, you know, then they got... Wouldn't that be a great way? But we don't have that. Now, in our Christian religion, which is the dominant one, and at least in my country, there's no connection with the family. You can go to church and you can hear the stories, but you're never going to hear a story about the scapegoat, and you're never going to hear a story about a toxic family that chooses a scapegoat, and you're never going to hear about the narcissistic head of household. You're never going to get that. So that was just something to think about as we move forward on this wonderful Monday.